Welcome to the show. The name of our show is We Are the People. As usual, every Thursday at 10:30 at night, I come right in front of you to share the views of some of the important guests. Every week I get lucky to have them at the show, and they share their expertise, they share their experience. I don't know whether those experience matters into your life or consider those experience as an advantage or a guideline of your life, but I receive thousands of phone calls. People are telling me that those are really important information, and if they can follow those information, they can achieve something. This year is a very important year. People are talking about presidential politics. Well, since this country's independence, there's a presidential election. One thing is very common. Lots of people are saying that political environment and situation nowadays, the one we are looking at, it was completely different in 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. Yeah, that was segregation was there, civil rights movement was up there, everything was there, but the behavior of the leader was way different than Sarah Palin, way different than Marco Rubio, way different than Ted Cruz, and of course, way different than 800-pound gorilla Donald Trump. Today, I was a little bit hesitant to do a talk show on presidential politics. I know two important people there in my life, my personal life. I know them very dearly, and they love to talk about politics sometimes, not officially in front of the television. With these two individuals, even when we go for lunch or dinner, we just keep arguing back and forth. Sometimes they support Democrat, and sometimes I support Republican. Again, what is the good part? We argue on topics that they can share their views, I can share my views. We don't get into a physical fight, neither we throw coffee to each other face or whatever we do. We are normal. When Donald Trump goes to the debate, and before the debate or after the debate, he says all those other Republicans are idiot. But these two individuals and me, we don't have to call name. We can have a civil conversation. Audience, today I'm lucky to have one of the gentlemen. He's here. As long as you see my anger face, you can call it ugly face, the gentleman will be here because he's one of my assets. I consider him as one of my role model, and sometimes whenever I try to follow his footsteps, I can see a smooth transition from odd situation to a normal situation. He's no other than Mr. Edward Hammock. Mr. Hammock, welcome to the show, sir.
Pleasure to be here, Mr. Milton, as
Thank
always.
you. And with me, she is one of the lady. One thing I always tell people, that whenever you look at her face has a design. Like when people are looking at my face, there is a sign that this guy is stupid. But when you see that lady, her face says she cares about people. She is no other than Attorney Donna Sullivan. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here as always.
So tell me your political affiliation as a student. What party you are affiliated when you went to the school or college?
When I grew up in Eastern Long Island, and it's a very heavily Republican area.
Okay.
So I was born and raised a Republican. But you have to realize, I was born and raised a Republican in a totally different time, in a totally different environment.
Okay. By the way, was there any leader like Donald Trump or Sarah Palin at that time?
No,
Okay.
no, there was not.
Okay.
When I was a child, the big problem at the time was Richard Nixon,
Okay.
which was a bit of a problem.
Yep.
But nonetheless, no, we didn't have anything like this. But as I grew up, I realized that I was no longer, when I was able to vote, I realized that I was not voting for a party. but I always viewed that I should be voting for a person.
Okay.
And as a result, I moved to the city of New York, and it was time for me to register. And I said, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I'm really not a straight line Republican, nor am I a straight line Democrat. I'm going to register as an independent. And
Wow.
that's what I did. And that's what I still am.
Wonderful. So now you're registered independent. You cannot vote in the primary, but you can vote in a general election.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Hammock.
Yes, sir.
Were you Republican the way Hillary Clinton was at her student life, or your path was a little different?
Listen, can I tell you this? I've been around long enough to remember that when I would go to visit my grandparents, who lived in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. That's where the family originally came from. There's a point to the story. We would go down on the Pennsylvania Railroad, now known as Amtrak.
Wow.
Okay? We had a ride in the car that was behind the coal car. Okay? Because people of color were not permitted to ride in any other car. So although my brother and myself were just kids, we were put in that car. And we had a smokestack on the engine, and the windows were up. And the old phrase, getting a cinder in your eye, we got plenty of them, because as the coal burned, the cinders came back through the windows and got in your face and your eye. And then you arrived at the...
And what year it was?
Oh, God, I was only about 8, 10 years old, so we're talking about in the 1950s.
Okay.
You arrive at the terminal station there in Atlanta, and I proceeded with my grandfather, who fortunately was a physician.
Wow.
And so we were going to get a cab to go over to Northwest, where the family lived. And you go outside, and the cab had on it, over the top, fastened to the windows on either side, white only, colored only. Okay? I come from that era all the way through to where we are today. So, I keep hearing South Carolina vote just now
Yep.
for Hillary. The black vote. What the heck is that? They talk about the black vote as though it's monolithic, but they don't explain. How can you, as a black American, today be in significant numbers in the Republican Party? Do they want you? Do they court you?
No.
Do they provide anything for you? We only got two major parties, Democrat and Republican. So when black people go, it's not because they were herd of people of color. It's because if you're going to expect anything to benefit you because you're so easily identifiable in the overall community because of your complexion, you're going to have to go where you have the best chance. So when black people go to vote and they vote Democrat, they're voting the best chance that they have to have a better life. Because with all the years that have gone by, with civil rights legislation, with Dr. Martin Luther King, with all the things that happened to people in southern states when they tried to get civil rights, living through, sorry for the death of Scalia, but look what's happened to the Civil Rights Act, most recently in our Supreme Court. Black people have to be aware, and you have to be concerned that if you get a president, he's not going to forget that you're there. Last piece before I stop. Barack Obama, Mitch McConnell, the day after he's installed in office, guarantee he'll only be a one-term president. And then they've done everything they could do to make sure that as a president, he didn't have the success that his talents indicated that he was entitled to have. That we the people, all of us, Republicans, Democrats, white, black, and any other color over here, we could have had a lot more as a country if the Republicans had not stopped Barack Obama each and every time they
He
had
tried
the
to do
opportunity.
something.
And you know, it's very hard as a black American and many white Americans to come to the conclusion that the only reason why Obama had all the trouble he had is because he was black.
There's no other reason.
What could there be? He's certainly smart enough.
Well, let me just say this, because this is a topic that Ed and I often discuss. This black vote. Do you ever hear it referred to as the white vote?
No.
Me neither. As a white person, obviously white, not black, I find it offensive to hear
The black vote.
the black vote. I cannot imagine how anyone who is black feels when they hear the black vote. Because what it indicates to me is when I hear the black vote, it is racially motivated. The purpose of it is to take all black people and to say, okay, they're all alike. Paint them with one stroke. There they are. How ridiculous is that, to do that to any group of people?
I didn't mean to cut you off. Mr. Hammock, finally, Clarence Thomas says something yesterday or day before yesterday.
Ain't that shocking?
As soon as Antonin Scalia died. What does that show? Probably Scalia was talking on his behalf, and suddenly when he died, now he need to talk?
Look here, Clarence had a lot of time. I was just mentioning this morning that all my time, I don't do a lot of Supreme Court studying, but every now and then, as a criminal defense lawyer here in New York, you have to look at a Supreme Court case decision. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to view a case decision in a criminal matter that was written by Clarence Thomas.
Wow.
It was only 2 or 3 years ago. He wrote the majority opinion in this particular case. And I have to say, on that particular issue, which had to do with federal sentencing guidelines, he was on the money. So one thing we do know, all the negative things you can say, and people who are black say lots of negative things about him, he's not stupid.
No, he's not. Of course
stupid.
he's not stupid.
Now, how you could be on the Supreme Court, there are only 9 judges at any given time, today only 8, but how you could avoid asking a question all that time, sitting in on all these arguments. I mean, it had to be by conscientious determination. So I'm hoping one day, before he leaves the bench, if he ever should, that he will share with us what motivated him to be Silent Sam.
And not to ask any question.
Doesn't seem to make any sense. There couldn't be that many. He sat on how many cases? And he never had the opportunity in any kind of a case to ask a question?
Okay, this is not related to the presidential politics, but I'll ask you anyway because you are an attorney. Nowadays, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, even Donald Trump, they are saying Barack Obama should not nominate anyone
For the Supreme Court position.
Supreme Court position.
Okay, let me just say this to you. Jacob, if right now you lose one of your shoes, okay, and you are expected to leave here and go about your business for the rest of the day, and one of your shoes, you can't find it.
I have to.
Are we going to sit here and expect for a moment that you're going to continue doing what you have to do, shoeless, with one shoe?
That's the way Republicans are expecting.
How, I mean, come on. So to even suggest we're down one, there's the hole. What do you do if one of the legs from this table, if we lose it, what are we going to do?
Donna, it's simple. What is the motivation? What is the objectivity to come up with these comments that he should not nominate? Why is that exactly?
Why is it? In order to increase the chances that someone, hopefully the Republican, will win the election, and if they win the election, then he or she can nominate whoever they think is appropriate.
But
it's politically motivated. Absolutely.
But don't you think other way that Barack Obama already nominated 2 judges? And
Whoa. Barack Obama, in terms of positions within the cabinet and so on, there are loads of people that have been nominated, and the Republicans won't do the confirmation hearings. And they're going to attack now on recess appointments. When the legislature's out of session and there's a spot that's open where the president has to appoint, you could do what's called a recess appointment. The New York Times just had an article on this yesterday, and the Republicans are trying to shut that down. So you can't do a recess appointment. When I went on the parole board here in the state of New York, I was a recess appointment. Okay, I didn't get confirmed by the Senate Finance Committee until I'd been on the job 13 months. I didn't refuse to go. They didn't see me. And it wasn't racially motivated. They just didn't get around to it. But I mean, now they want to cut out the president's power to do recess appointments. You know, when the Republicans get back in control and they have the White House, whether they win it this time or 4 years from now or whatever, they're going to want to undo all of this. Because presidents have to have the ability to move the government forward. If government agencies don't function because their commissioners are not confirmed by the Senate, the agency suffers. Who is the agency there for? It's there for us.
Exactly.
So who actually suffers? The people do. And a lot of problems that we have in this country have come from what we don't talk about anymore. Republicans shut down the government. Republicans fighting on the money that was owed. What do you call it? The debt.
The debt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
They defunded agencies,
That's right.
cut their funding back. The agencies don't function the way they could and should. The president has to take all that criticism, but it's part of, it's a combination of forces. We have 3 branches of government, and the Congress and the president have to work together. He proposes legislation as well, they can too, but they got to pass it.
But how Barack Obama is going to work with 2 other agencies when House of Representatives and Senate, they already have a mindset not to support the president or whatever he does.
But that's the problem. That's the core of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has forgotten what their responsibility is. Their responsibility is not to their particular party. Their responsibility is not to any powers that be. Their first and primary responsibility are to the people. The people, period. You're given a job. You were elected to do a job. Do it.
But
we've lost that, Jacob. We've lost it. We've lost it to the point of what Ed just explained. And we've lost it over and over. The question is not why. The question is, what are we going to do? You know, Donald Trump and others talk about, we've got to get back America. You're darn right we've got to get back America. And it's not from a Barack Obama. We've got to get America back from the people that we've elected that sit around and allow government to just stop.
doing nothing.
And be inactive and think that that's acceptable. How can that be acceptable? How do you look your constituents in the eye and say, oh yeah, I'm collecting my paycheck, but I'm not working this month, or maybe next month, or maybe the whole year? And why is that? Because politically it's not in my best interest.
I'll ask you a follow-up question. You're a Republican in the past.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of days ago, Senator Lindsey Graham says, our party is run by a couple of nuts nowadays. What's your comments? Nowadays, all those Republican Party, now Ted Cruz, Sarah Palin, and they're the one running the Republican Party?
The Republican Party it's a different party than it was. You mentioned earlier that Hillary Clinton had said that she was a Republican when she was a student. You know, back in that time, we're talking about, I would estimate, probably in the 70s. And at that time, things were very, very different. There were differences of opinion, but they were not night and day. They weren't. And they weren't. You had also conservatives, but you also had liberals. So here you have Republicans and Democrats, and you have conservatives and you have liberals. Today, there's such a division that there's nothing that's in between. So I'm sure, I don't know about Hillary Clinton, but I can speak for myself. I would have, if somebody had asked me, I would have said, I'm a moderate Republican. I did not consider myself to be a conservative Republican. I felt conservatives were way too conservative. We were middle of the road people. That's gone. That is gone. It does not exist anymore. So when Lindsey Graham says what he says, he's now talking about people that are already conservative, and now he's referring to a group that are so far out, it's like they're Martians.
Yeah.
That's what he's referring to. It's frightening. It's frightening. And I think the whole party, to say it's got problems is an understatement. But the biggest problem for me are the people that are supporting this. That's where I have my biggest problem. I say, what has happened to us as a country? There used to be a time, because I grew up in a time, where you could sit down and have a conversation with someone else, with other people, like we're doing now, and we might be able to, and we may express differences of opinion, as you said at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
Those days are really gone. Have you watched one debate where there has actually, and I'm talking about the Republican debates, where there's actually been a debate of issues?
No.
Why do I have to, in order to make a point to the public, why do I have to talk about, your haircut that I don't like, or why do you have to talk about my ugly glasses, or what are we talking about? Why can't we talk about issues? Why can't we talk, well, Donna, I don't see it this way, I see it this way. There's no talk about that, because the focus, again, is not on the job to be done. It's not on the constituents. It's not about working for a community, for our community, for these United States. We've gotten to the point where it's about me. Oh, if I happen to help you in the long run, okay, but it's really about me. How sad.
This is, if you say only sad, I would go a little further. It's
tragic.
Really ridiculous the way
It's
these people
tragic.
Yeah, it is tragic. Papa Hammock, John McCain and Mitch McConnell, they made a comment. If Donald Trump become the nominee of the Republican Party, he already told his colleague at the Senate and Congress, says, you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want. We don't like to see a candidate like Donald Trump getting party's nomination. Is there any significance that Mitch McConnell says those things?
Well, it is. I mean, Mitch McConnell has been as obstructionist with the Obama administrations, the two of them, as any other Republican. And he's not been good for government in the U.S. and for the people in the U.S. But all I can get from the comments that he's made about the leader on the Republican side is that he has limits as well. And it's easy to see that McConnell, who's a government guy, he's a mainstream Republican, not in the mold of what Ms. Sullivan is talking about from times gone by, but he holds on to it a little bit. Maybe if Obama was a white guy or a white woman, it wouldn't be the same as it was. But he is not ready to take the American government and toss it in the garbage can, and he is concerned that a person so ill-equipped to run a country this size in these days and times. We're not alone. I mean, a lot of things have changed over the years. The U.S. is still the strongest nation, but it's not so strong that it can do whatever it wants. It certainly cannot.
Mr. Hammock, you are an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you are a teacher. You are a conscious American citizen, and you care about community. Say you are not registered as a Democrat, neither independent, or you didn't register yourself anywhere. Being a teacher, being a lawyer, there is 3 or 4 candidates. They're still running for Republican nomination. Some people, these 3 or 4 people, making some comments at the debate, outside the debate, people are criticizing, some news medias are calling that it's really sad to see that our candidates become so low that they're talking about some of the issues should not even mention at the presidential politics. My question is, do you think these 3 or 4 people running as a teacher, do you have the stomach to say, okay, student, vote for him? Can you point your fingers to any candidate?
Well, there are 5 Republican candidates left. Trump, we all know who he is. And you got Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. And you have
Ben
Carson, who's silent man. I don't really know what he's saying anymore. He certainly is not getting into all of this crazy criticism, personal criticism that Cruz and Rubio have gotten into. I don't think either of them, most particularly Rubio, has made himself look more like a potential president as a result of what he's doing, trying to gain some
momentum.
over to try to catch up with Trump. And Trump is, we don't even have to say. Now, the guy that's still in there, who they don't seem to include much anymore, is John Kasich, the guy from Ohio. And he makes the most sense. He certainly has a good knowledge of.
Even New York Times endorsed him.
Yes.
He knows the world situation. I mean, the world situation. He's familiar with what's going on with ISIS. Some of those problems that have to be addressed, and I think he's staying in the election effort, in the hope that at some point, we Americans who are supporting somebody like Donald Trump will come to realize he can't do it for us.
Okay.
He doesn't even say he can do it. I mean, what does Donald Trump actually say? Make America great again. How? He doesn't say.
There's no specific.
Build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Mexico says, get lost.
Okay.
It ain't going to happen.
But how do you make a comment? Donald Trump suddenly says America should stop issuing visa to any Muslim,
Please.
a presidential candidate.
Look at everything that he has said. The question, I think, is who's next? The Muslims, got to get them out. Mexicans, they got to put that wall up. I mean, we can go down the line. Who's next?
Listen, everybody is talking about Donald Trump, that he's hot-headed or whatever he says. Even a candidate like Ben Carson, he says, if I become the president, I'm not going to include any Muslim into my cabinet.
Very silly.
That is sheer ignorance. Sheer ignorance, and even worse.
But Donna, he's not ignorant. It's being said in order to get some votes.
Well, okay. Yes.
If you have some person who is eminently qualified for a particular position
Right.
in the government, he can help that agency or help the government to run. And then you say, oh, geez, what's his religion? Oh, he's Muslim? We can't have him?
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. This is Donna Sullivan talking. When Donald Trump started running, and he started with making the comments that he was making, I remember Ed and I were talking one day, and I said to him, the buzzards are coming home to roost. It's an old expression.
Yes.
And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I hate like heck to say to you that I'm right, because I desperately wanted to be wrong all these years. But I said, I remember over the years we've had this conversation where I've shared with you that I believe that there's a lot more racism than people really want to admit to.
Okay.
I think things are better than they were, but I do not believe that things are as good as we all want to believe them to be. And he and I would go back and forth, and he'd say, well, I think that's kind of being cynical, Don. I said, I'm just telling you, that's what I think. And the fact that Donald Trump has gotten to the point that he's gotten, and he's on a roll. Take a look at who's supporting him. And I hate to say this, but it's the truth. Things in this country are not as good as many of us wanted to believe
Yep.
and needed to believe. And I say that in a very, very sad, depressing way, because I don't like to be right in these kind of things. But on this one, I'm right. Because who is supporting him? Anyone that would sit here in today's world and make a comment about Muslims, Jews, I don't care who we're talking about, any group of people, and make that kind of comment with that kind of commitment, with that kind of determination and belief, that this is the best that we've got in this country. This is who we're going to have lead our country. That's why, getting back to what we were saying before about the black vote, I got news for you. Donald Trump doesn't have the white vote, because if he does, he doesn't have this one. And there's a load of others that he does not have. Mm-hmm. Okay. But he's got too many of them.
Donna, he made a statement 3 days ago. He did a press conference in Arizona, says there's a rumor that KKK are his main supporter, or Tea Party, or out of Tea Party, or some there's a paramilitary. They're in the jungle. What do they call it? That
You're not talking about the white supremacists.
white supremacists. So at that press conference, he says, "Oh, I'm not endorsed by those group." But guess what? There was a joke. National Enquirer and Chicago Tribune put a picture, some of the skinhead guys standing right behind him. He says, then who are those people? Like he's taking all those people and come to the press conference and says, hey, I'm not supported by white, what is supremacist or supremacist?
Supremacists.
Yeah. So some people are saying that NRA, National Rifles Association, as well as white supremacists, those groups, blindly supporting Donald Trump. And it's like he's the only candidate giving them hope that when Donald Trump says we're going to get our America back, they would like to go back to pre-civil rights time, that they would like to go back.
I would agree with that. I mean, I agree that's, I'm not going to say all of it, but that's certainly a big part of his momentum. That's my opinion. Yes, I believe it.
Donna, I'm having fun with this conversation. Mr. Hammock,
Yes, sir.
we are really having fun. We are going to take you one small commercial break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
Audience, this is Jacob Milton. I'm talking to attorney Edward Hammock and Donna Sullivan. We are talking about presidential politics, candidates, Republican and Democratic Party. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Usually, no one likes the hassle of going to court, dealing with government agencies, or law enforcement. The reality is, we live in a world where all of that is inevitable. Legal Network International LLC has all the legal sources of the 21st century. We are armed with dozens of attorneys, CPAs, and other needed professionals. Here is a word from one of the attorneys at Legal Network International, LLC.
Hello, my name is Edward Hammock. I'm an attorney admitted to practice before all the courts of the state of New York. And I've been admitted to practice for a long number of years. Our area of specialty over the years has been criminal defense. But before I went into the private practice of law, I had a fairly long career in public service, having served in a number of positions both for the state of New York and the city of New York. As a part of our practice, because of some of my public service work, we do a lot of work on behalf of those who've been convicted of crime and sent to prison, trying to get them, if they're eligible, home sooner. It's been rewarding work, and we've had a lot of success in doing it. What we've learned is that people are not always defined by something that they do that turns out to be criminal. We find that a lot of people that are good people get sent to prison. If you do something, like they used to say on TV, if you do the crime, you got to do the time. That's true, but you still, and that's a public policy in our state, when you complete serving your time, if you have to go to prison, you're supposed to be returned to the status you enjoyed before you are convicted. So we proceed on the theory that there probably is something good in everyone, and when we can find that something that's good, we do what we can to be helpful. We care about people. We work hard for our clients. I am pleased to have Donna Sullivan work with me as my partner, and we hope to continue serving people in the state of New York, both in and out of prison, for as long as we can. Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. This is Jacob Milton. We are talking about presidential politics. A couple of days ago, I did a show with a guest named Dr. Sokot and Dr. Meena Farah. Dr. Meena Farah, she is someone is truly independent woman, a very successful woman. She said it that we need Donald Trump in Bangladesh. I disagreed with her and I says, if Donald Trump become the head of any country of the world, that country will go down. That country has no chance to prosper. But someone will prosper if he become head of the government. Do you know who? Donald Trump himself. If he's worth of $7 or $8 billion or $4 billion today, if he become the president of any country, he will be worth of probably 20 billion. You remember one of the rich guy become the mayor of New York City? Before he become the mayor, he was worth of 13 billion. And did you ever read when he left the office how much he worth? 27 billion. Even though he made a mockery saying, I'm not taking nothing as salary, I'm gonna take $1. He don't have to take anything because he earned total of $14 billion in 12 years. So that's what Donald Trump will do if he become the president of this country. Yeah, there will be lots of casinos. People can go there and gamble and become homeless. Donna, does that make any sense to you that Donald Trump can be the solution because he is not one of the Washington insider?
No, I don't believe in any way he's a solution. You know, people, this whole election, people are talking over and over about getting something back. Everybody's talking about it.
Yep.
So clearly it indicates something's missing. And I think where we disagree is on what's missing. And what's missing is not, I don't think the determining factor is whether you're a Washington insider, whether you're an outsider. I think the determining factor is who you are, what experience you have, and what you intend to do. What positions do you take on certain issues, and what do you want to do, and how are you going to go about it? When you look at someone like him in terms of the way that he's presented himself during this entire election period so far, it's clear that what he wants to do, the way he gets his attention, is he doesn't just want to get attention. He says things, he does things, he makes statements in order to get an intense reaction. And it's an intense reaction that's a negative or a very positive. But when you look at that reaction is so strong that it really helps you lose sight of what the devil the issue was to begin with. So somebody who's running in that position today, we need somebody who can have conversation. We've yet to see him have a conversation with any of the people that he's running against. Now, these are people from his party that there must be some things they have in common, and he can't even, in that situation, engage in a conversation. I don't agree with you. I do agree with you. No, he has to say something that's so outrageous and, frankly, hurtful in many instances. Hurtful.
But still, those statements, he become popular with those statements.
He becomes popular with that statement because what those statements do is they inflame certain people. But others, what he does is he ignites the fire within them. They are angry. They're upset. And regardless of the reason why, instead of determining what the reason is that I'm upset and angry about, when he says something like this, it just fires me up even more. And they look to him as though, well, he'll say whatever what's on his mind. I want somebody in office that's just going to say whatever's on his mind and do whatever he thinks at the moment is right. These people that are supporting that kind of a representative don't appreciate basic concepts in life like diplomacy. And I'm not even talking about in an election year. I'm not even talking about with political people. I'm talking about in everyday life. I'm talking about a little schoolyard, a little bunch of 5 and 6-year-old kids. When they're playing, one of the things you learn as a child is, how am I going to relate to my peers? How am I going to tell them I don't like what they're doing without punching Jacob in the face, without you pulling my hair? How are we going to relate? Well, if you magnify that, and now you're on this big stage, and it's an election year, it's the same idea. You've got people that are upset, that are angry, that have issues. You've got to find a way to have conversation so that you can then find appropriate solutions. And a lot of people today in our country, we're the instant gratification generation now. Right. That's who's running around here. We're no longer people that are willing to take our time and to think things through. We want instant results. Everything's instant, no matter what you do or where you go.
And that's why they're liking Donald
They
Trump.
like Donald because he says something, and boy, that sounds good. But they're not thinking through, what are the ramifications of what he just said? Who just got hurt by what he just said? Was that really, did he have to say that? Well, what's his solution? Well, if we do it this way, what is the long-term effect? They don't have the capacity or the willingness to do it.
Donna, does that make sense to you when you say something I didn't thought about it before, that people are looking for quick solution, that he has that capacity to solve that issues. He has one quick solution. If he says, okay, you have $100,000 in your bank account, why don't you go to one of my casinos and gamble?
Right.
You may get million, you may earn $1 million.
Right.
But question is, if 1 million people pull out their $100,000 goes to the casinos, only 1 or 2% will become millionaire. True. But what is going to happen to the other people?
Exactly.
They'll be homeless, right?
Exactly.
Let
Exactly.
me just say this to you. You know, it's funny how in America we just forget our history.
Yeah.
Right. Think of this for a moment. Why do we have a do-nothing Congress? Because Barack Obama was the president,
Right.
and they don't want to do anything to help him to do for us what ought to be done.
Yeah.
Okay? You can have proper debate.
Yeah.
You can disagree with the president, but you've got to function as a legislature.
Absolutely.
They refuse to do so. Now, Donald Trump gets elected. The mainstream Republicans who were there have already said, we can't work with this guy.
Yep, they already said it.
Okay?
Openly.
So now, how is he going to do all of these things he's talking about?
Using executive power, that's what he's talking about.
But they're not going to let him do it because they're trying to knock it down from Obama before he gets out of office.
Yep.
So whatever they're able to achieve will be there, but they're going to stand pat. When he talks about he wants to appropriate money to build a dumb wall between the United States and Mexico, the Congress is not going to appropriate that money. They're not going to do it. So you're going to have built in a war between those Republicans who laid down on the job for Obama, who now have to get out of their dumb beds and go to work to keep this guy in line. Now, what kind of a government is that going to give us?
It would be more
We're going to have
chaotic.
the Senate and the House of Representatives against the president more so than they were against Barack Obama. That was a racial issue more than anything else.
It is.
This is going to be on every level. The guy's not going to be able to get anything done. Why would we put ourselves in position to get somebody who's going to be president who can't get anything done?
Can you look into a little deeper, Mr. Hammock? But I think Donald Trump is not running for Republican nomination or presidential election to get elected. That's my view.
Okay.
Why I believe that? He is winner already. He went into this race, his business is up, his name recognition, his legitimate claim on some of the issues, he already sold his idea. Now, even if he don't get the nomination, even if he is going to lose in a general election, still financially and name recognition wise, publicity wise, he is a winner, don't you think so?
Absolutely. I think the more he runs, the clearer it becomes that he's going to be the nominee, the clearer it becomes that most likely Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president. I mean, I think everything he does is pushing in that direction. You know, and if that does happen, what you're saying is so. He's going to walk away from this campaign. Look at what I did.
I did.
Look at who I am. I came from whatever that apprentice, whatever that program was he was doing, and the casinos, and whether I have money or I don't have as much money as I say, I almost became president.
Yep. And don't you think
you can't take that away from him?
Absolutely not. He will become he will become the beneficiary of this presidential election, and he will be benefited billions of dollars. I think people think, okay, this guy is not dumb after all. He is he has legitimate reason to think that he is a presidential material. Do you think that in this election he is already a winner?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And after tonight, this is Super Tuesday. After tonight, the numbers are going to be there for him. He's not going to have much further to go to be the Republican nominee.
And I also, if I may, I also agree with you that I do not believe that his intention is to win the election.
But that's my belief.
And I agree with you, okay? But I also say to you, which is what makes me nervous. There was a movie, I think it was back in the 1970s, maybe you remember, Ed. Robert Redford starred in this movie, and it was called The Candidate. And I remember at the time watching this movie with my dad, and we used to talk politics quite a bit in our house. And I remember the movie very vividly because Robert Redford was running for this office. I forget what it was, but he was running, and his whole life was about winning this election.
Okay.
The last line from that movie is Redford won. And he turned to his supporters, he turned to his team, leaned over and said, now what do I do? I will never forget that movie because I remember the conversation that my father and I had after we watched that movie. I was just a kid at the time. But that is what I worry about with Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's getting exactly and even more than even Donald Trump anticipated that he would be getting. But I am fearful because I don't think even he anticipated the level of support and the momentum that he's been able to create. And if we end up with that end result, as we did in that movie, now what do we do?
You have no idea.
That's the question I ask.
Mr. Hammock, when he was exploring that idea that he's going to run for governor for the state of New York, there was a survey. Lots of people did survey. And all those survey comes out that he's not electable, even as a governor of New York State. How come he's almost getting the nomination of the Republican Party? What is the specialty? What do you think?
Well, he's done something that nobody anticipated. Anyone running for an office as high as the President of the United States of America, he's done it. And like was suggested by Donna earlier on, there are a lot of people in this country. Now, when I say a lot, I don't have a percentage. And if I had a percentage, it's clearly would not be 30%, 25%. It would probably be much smaller. But that's still a lot of people out of 300 million people. There are a lot of people in this country that harbor some really, really way out positions. So ethnic discrimination, religious discrimination, you know, I don't want to lump them in because maybe it's unfair to some, but the NRA nuts, and there are some that are nuts. All of these people, these military militias that they have running around.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
The KKK, which was dead as a doornail, that's now getting a rebirth. You know, these fringe people that are out there, they've been out there a long time with no voice. They found a voice in Donald Trump. So remember, these caucuses and so on are not really the entire electorate. We're moving in that direction, depending upon the delegate count. But we're certainly not looking at the general election. But there's those people out there that felt they had no voice. They got a voice.
Donna, let's talk about other party. What do you think of Bernie Sanders?
I think Bernie Sanders is very well-meaning. I think he has solid good intentions. I think he believes in everything
He said.
that he says. I truly do. I believe that he believes that all that he says is what candidates running should say.
Okay.
Having said that, the problem I have with Bernie Sanders is how, in God's name, are you going to be able to do 1/100th of what you say you're going to do? That's problem one. Problem number two that I have with him is having these great ideas and putting them together and developing and gaining momentum as he has. I give him enormous credit. And I think, truly, I think part of his momentum is due to his candor. I really do believe he's the real deal. I believe he really believes what he says. However, what experience does he have to run for that office? And when you compare him and you compare Hillary Clinton,
Can you
I
respond?
just don't see it.
Can you respond to this? You ask a legitimate question that what qualification he has. When there was a civil rights movement, it was Bernie Sanders walked side by side with Dr. Martin Luther King. And that time Hillary Clinton was busy doing a Republican student wing. When there was the Iraq war, Hillary voted in favor of war. And there was a Bernie Sanders, only one senator who says no. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
When civil rights bill passed, he was campaigning everywhere, Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
Even he was being badmouthed by people. Oh, look at the Jewish guy. Okay? Still, he says, don't look at me as a Jewish. I'm a human. I'm standing with Dr. Martin Luther King. Let me do what I believe. And when Chris Dodd financial regulatory bill passed, he was very instrumental with Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. He did it very successfully, push it. Even though as an independent senator, he did his best. He knows the organization, he knows government's structure, and he did his best. That's his credential. On the side, if people says, what Hillary's credential? You are saying he was a Secretary of State. You can say he was the First Lady. Other than Secretary of State, can you name one successful legislation that Hillary brought it to the Senate floor and did anything successfully?
We would never have Obamacare had it not been for Hillary.
Okay.
And I remember when Hillary was First Lady, and I remember when she started first talking
yes.
about health insurance
I do.
for all.
I do believe
And
that.
she got laughed at, whipped at, beat up.
I know.
They ripped that woman apart.
I know.
That woman has resilience, the likes of which I could only aspire to. I don't know where she gets it from, but I will say this, I suspect I know where she gets it from. She's committed. She's committed to doing the best she can with the experience she's had. And I differ with you. When you say, well, she was Secretary of State, oh no. She was a dynamite Secretary of State. That woman clocked more miles than anybody else, and it's not just miles. She got into really difficult situations, and she, through her experience, all of those years, they came and really, really blossomed when she became Secretary of State. Because had it not been for her, we would not have the relationships that we currently have around the world. And people take that for granted, and they take it very lightly. And all I say is, if you've got the wrong Secretary of State in that position, or the wrong person, you'll find out very quickly how rough things can be here and abroad.
On that one, I'm not making any argument against your views because in a certain point, I feel the same way. But at the same time, we cannot underestimate Bernie Sanders' views, experience at the Senate as a legislator. Can we?
No.
Can I
go,
get in
go
here?
ahead. Go ahead.
All the things you said about Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
doesn't get to the point,
Right.
okay? The point that she made, which is the point to be made with Bernie Sanders, is not is he a good guy. She did say, we all believe he's a good guy.
I do.
Okay.
I
Okay.
really do.
But you have a Republican Congress, Republican Senate. You have an idea that is very, very costly. Now, how realistic is it to assume that the things he's pushing for, particularly the attack on the corporations,
Yeah.
those corporations are not chumps. They are tremendously powerful.
They
And
are.
it's true, everybody in the House of Representatives has to run every 2 years. You cannot run for election in this country unless you have money.
Money.
So that relationship between the politicians and the corporations, you don't just wish it away. You don't become president and it's over with. It's something that has to be worked on. And it's something where you're going to have to get the cooperation of the Senate and the Assembly, not the Assembly, the Senate and
Senate.
the House of Representatives.
Right.
Bernie Sanders is so way out. We're going to get all this money to have free educations. Those are nice ideas. How realistic is it, given what he's going to have to work with to get it done? He doesn't pull in his horns. He doesn't truly address how that's going to get done. So we're not saying he's a bad guy and that he didn't come out for
No.
good issues and
No,
so
no,
on.
no.
We're saying that his current platform, which is being supported, as you know, we all know, by younger people who would be in the position to benefit if those things became true. But making them true, is that realistic? The reason why you end up looking at we end up looking at Hillary Clinton is not because she's perfect by any means, but she is trained over the years. She has been through wars. Like she says, I've had knocks as I've gone. They've jumped on her as they continue to jump on her with truly bogus issues. Issues of no consequence. Benghazi. 23 investigations on Benghazi.
And there was nothing.
It's nothing. You know, I mean, listen, the death of that guy over there and the other people who died with him, that's a tragic thing. But the beheading by ISIS, that's a tragic thing. I mean, there's stuff that's got to be addressed by the president, and he does need the support. She does need the support of the House and the Senate. Bernie is, with his great ideas, it's just not going to go.
So-
what we hope, well, what I hope for, I don't know about Donna, but what I hope for, and I suspect, because when they get on, Bernie and Hillary, to debate, they try to keep it above board. They try to keep it respectful. Mm-hmm. They try to talk to their issues. And my feeling is, if she ends up winning, she is not going to close the door on Bernie Sanders.
I don't think so either.
She's going to call Bernie in, or Bernie's going to come in, and they're going to talk about how they can move in the directions that he wanted to go in with his campaign. That's what I think. I think she's smart enough to know that this guy has value, and that at 73 years of age, he wouldn't be running around like he is if he wasn't serious and if he didn't care about Americans, you know? So I'm hoping that they will team up on some of these issues to try to get it done.
Okay. Mr. Hammock and Donna both. I'm not going to say I agree with everything you says based on the political principle or ideology. You remember in 1963 or 62 when John F. Kennedy was running for the president? Lyndon Johnson was really powerful at that time, because Lyndon Johnson also was running for Democratic nomination. And that time, Lyndon Johnson and Democratic, all those other leaders, they tried to sell it. Look at the Kennedy boys, a Catholic guy, he want to be president.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the ideas Kennedy was talking about, and they says he's not electable, and how he's going to implement all those ideas, because he don't want to sell arms to the third world or other, so on and so forth. But ultimately he got nominated, he got elected. I agree with Edward Hammock. He says how he's going to do it. Personally, I believe his idea is doable, but it's not sellable to the American public. In a general election, he is not electable. That's my personal opinion. Bernie Sanders is in a general election, he is not electable. But what is worrying me is if Marco Rubio is the Republican nominee and Hillary Clinton is Democratic nominee, there is a if in regards to Hillary's candidacy to become president. We are end of our time. I will ask your conclusion. What's your prediction if Marco Rubio is the nominee of the Republican Party and Hillary is the nominee for Democratic Party? What's your take?
A landslide by Hillary Clinton.
And she's going to get elected.
I believe it. We're dumb Americans, but I truly believe we're not that dumb.
Okay.
And Marco Rubio right now trying to gain some traction.
Yes.
Big mistake.
Now what he's, I mean, the things that he's saying, listen, it's not that I disagree with anything he said about Trump.
Yeah.
It's just totally, totally inappropriate.
He's out.
Inappropriate, and don't you think it's irrelevant too?
Oh, please, it's nonsense.
He's out in the schoolyard. They're the bullies out there, and instead of saying, "Oh, please," and continuing on with what he's got to do, he's running out there, rolling up his sleeves, and he's getting in the mud.
I cannot believe in a presidential candidate, one candidate is calling other one con artist.
I can't believe
I cannot believe.
I can't believe a lot of things that have been said by the Republicans this
Republican
time.
these, yeah.
Let me tell you.
The comment that Marco Rubio says, I think Donald Trump's wet his pants.
I-
Oh, what kind of craziness. This
It
is a
is crazy.
presidential election effort, and they're saying these ridiculous, he's got
It is.
small hands.
I know.
He's got little
I
hands.
know.
Donna, thank you very much for that you manage your time in the middle of the day. I knew that we have to do this show at 1 o'clock, and you squeezed your time and managed it. And still I was late.
No,
Thanks for coming to the
my
show.
pleasure.
And
Always
in
a
the
pleasure.
future, we'll do way more, couple of dozen segments with you. Let's see where we're going to end up.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hammock, it's always a pleasure. I know you are mad at me why I am late all the time.
Maybe we'll come back, after we have a Democratic candidate and a Republican candidate.
That time we are going to do another. No, I have to run another 3 episode. This three. I'm not going to get anybody else for the presidential election.
Okay.
And okay. Thank you for coming, and thank you so much, audience. When I try to talk about presidential politics in this country, I try to talk of the subject which makes sense. Mr. Hammock, he is well experienced individual who is working with the elected official over year after year. As he mentioned, I cannot believe, he says, when he was coming from Atlanta, Georgia to New York, he was in a cold room, and I was looking at his eyes. If I start, my tear almost comes out in my eyes. I says, what's the world we are living at that time? But anyway, I'm lucky to have him at the show, as well as Donna. I personally believe if Hillary got elected, it would be better for America. And at the same time, I don't think if Bernie Sanders become elected president, it's not bad. He has some great idea. I don't know whether it is doable or not. That's subject of debate. But in a Republican side, I don't see anyone. As a matter of fact, I wanted to hear from Donna and Hammock. If someone goes to them and says, okay, I'm Republican, what is the candidate? Who should be the candidate that I should vote for? I don't think Mr. Hammock or Donna would recommend any of the candidate from Republican Party, the people we have at this point. John Kasich, I like his idea. Even New York Times endorsed him. But for some reason, I have a negative attitude towards him for one reason. He was a Fox News commentator at the time of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. He literally hammered Bill Clinton. Like one show I remember, he was with Bill O'Reilly. He mentioned President Clinton as pig, a sitting president. He called him pig. For some reason, Bill Clinton is one of the successful president of this country, and I think in a 21st century, if people are talking about 2 or 3 presidents, Bill Clinton would be one of them. But calling him pig and saying it at Fox News, those were not some of the subject we should talk about when we are talking about a president. Anyway, hopefully within our discussion, we gave you a little bit of guideline. You can think whatever you can think, and you can vote for anyone you think. But in the future, when that primary would be wrapped up, I'll bring Mr. Edward Hammock and Donna Sullivan to this table, and we're going to talk about presidential politics again. Thanks for watching us. This is Jacob Milton. Please meet us next week at We Are the People. Thank you.